Okay, so you know how we love to like really get into a topic?
Yeah, totally.
Well, today we're diving into something huge.
Yeah, this is a big one for sure.
Yeah, Jesus and Buddha, right?
Ah.
Like talk about influential figures.
Definitely two of the biggest names in history.
It's wild how they both started these massive world religions, but when you really look at their lives, their teachings,
Yeah.
totally different vibes.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like they're coming from completely different places.
Exactly. So that's our deep dive today, unpacking those differences, figuring out what made each of them tick.
Should be fascinating.
Right. Okay. So before we unpack everything, I'm super curious, what's your take? Like just off the top of your head, when you think Jesus, what comes to mind?
That's a good question. I guess I think of like love, forgiveness, miracles, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And Buddha.
Buddha, more like meditation, enlightenment, finding peace within yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny how those instant associations, they kind of sum up the key differences, right? But to really get it, we got to rewind back to the source, like way back.
Let's do it.
All right, so Buddha born Siddhartha Gautama, a prince, right? Total luxury, shielded from all the bad stuff life throws at you.
Yeah, the story goes he lived in a palace walls, literally keeping out the realities of the world.
Like a bubble.
Exactly. But then one day he ventures out.
And bam, reality hits.
He sees sickness, old age, death, all that tough stuff for the first time. Can you imagine?
Seriously sheltered upbringing to that? It's like a punch to the gut, right?
Absolutely. And this wasn't just some personal crisis for Siddhartha. It totally messed with the prevailing worldview. See, in ancient India, they were obsessed with this idea of samsara, this endless cycle of birth, death, rebirth. Like, imagine everyone today stressing about escaping the rat race, but like on a cosmic level.
Whoa, deep.
Right. So even Siddhartha, with all his privilege, he couldn't escape this universal struggle.
So he ditches the palace life, right? Goes on a quest.
Exactly. He becomes a wandering ascetic, trying to hack the system, so to speak. He even like almost starved himself to death trying to find enlightenment.
Intense. So how does he go from starving hermit to like the Buddha?
Well, eventually he realizes that totally denying your body isn't the answer. He chills out, sits under a tree, meditates, and bam, enlightenment.
Just like that.
Well, not exactly. It was years of searching, but the point is, he found a middle path. Not about luxury, but not about punishing yourself either.
Balance, right? Okay, so he becomes Buddha, the awakened one.
Yeah.
And then what? He starts preaching.
Exactly. And his big teaching is all about the Four Noble Truths. It's kind of like Buddhism 101.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so first, truth, life, is suffering. We all experience pain, loss, disappointment, no escaping it.
Okay, that's kind of bummer. What's next?
So the second truth is that suffering comes from craving.
Yeah.
It's like we're always chasing something, wanting more, never satisfied.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that leads to the third truth. You can actually end suffering, not by escaping life, but by changing your relationship to those cravings.
Okay, so HOW. That's got to be truth number 4.
You got it. The fourth truth is all about the Eightfold Path. It's like Buddha's guidebook to enlightenment, a way to live that minimizes suffering and leads to nirvana, which is basically the end of the cycle.
Interesting. So less about worshiping a god and more about like self-improvement.
Exactly. It's about understanding your mind and how to break free from those negative patterns that cause suffering. Pretty revolutionary stuff for the time.
It's wild how those ancient ideas, mindfulness, letting go of attachments, they're still so relevant today.
Right. It's like Buddha was onto something about the human condition.
Totally. Okay, so we've got Buddha's story. Now let's switch gears to Jesus.
Okay.
So unlike Buddha's comfy start, Jesus' life was way different.
For sure, he was born into more humble beginnings.
Right, we're talking Roman-occupied Judea, definitely not a life of luxury. So how does he enter the scene?
Well, we don't know a ton about his early life, but around 30 years old, he starts his public ministry teaching healing, performing miracles.
Yeah, the miracles. Walking on water, healing the sick, that's huge EE.
Definitely a big part of his story. And his message was all about love, compassion, forgiveness.
And he was all about God.
Right.
Like a direct connection.
Absolutely. Jesus taught that he was the Son of God sent to redeem humanity from sin.
Okay, so that's a big difference from Buddha. Buddha was all about self-discovery. Jesus is more about faith in something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And this difference is key to understanding their different approaches to suffering. Buddha focused on ending suffering by ending desire, detaching from the material world.
And Jesus.
Jesus offered salvation, a way to reach eternal life through faith in him and his sacrifice.
So it's like two different solutions to the same problem.
Kind of. Two sides of the same coin, maybe.
I like that. So both offer paths to dealing with suffering, but from totally different angles.
Exactly.
And speaking of different their endings are fascinating to compare, too.
Oh, so?
Well, Buddha dies peacefully after years of teaching, right? A natural end to a life dedicated to enlightenment. But Jesus, his death on the cross isn't the end. It's like the pivotal moment in the whole Christian story.
That's such a good point. The resurrection is everything in Christianity. It's the proof of Jesus' divinity, the promise of eternal life for believers.
Exactly. So different from Buddha's emphasis on breaking free from the cycle of rebirth, Jesus offers a different kind of freedom, a direct relationship with God through his sacrifice.
You know, it's amazing how these two figures, despite their radically different paths, both had such a huge impact on the world.
Billions of followers.
Right. It really makes you think they must have tapped into something universal about the human experience, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It just goes to show there's not always one right answer, right? Like, understanding how they're different actually gives you a richer understanding of both.
100%.
So there you have it, folks. Jesus and Buddha, a crash course in their amazing lives and teachings.
Such a fascinating comparison.
Right. I hope this inspires you to keep digging. There's so much more to explore.
For sure. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. But hey, that's what deep dives are for, right?